What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Words from the Nerds podcast. I, and as well as Aiden, are joined by a lovely guest today. We have Brendan, our good friend, otherwise known as Dan.bren on TikTok as well as YouTube. I believe you're on YouTube as Dan.bren as well. Yes.
I am,
Okay.
yeah.
How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Well, not great because I'm about to talk about a really crazy episode of The Last of Us.
True that. This episode has been universally loved so far. I believe it's the highest rated episode on IMDb so far. And I just want to throw in a little because it's funny that someone said so you guys didn't like the episode with the two or the four gay characters, but then as soon as they throw in a pedophile rapist, like then you guys just rated up the wall, which is true. I mean, yeah, because those two episodes got review bombed. It's absolutely stupid, despicable. Looking at you, DC Super Zam, I'll just call your dumb ass right away. I hate his
There
ass.
you go, Charlie.
But yeah, I love this episode. I believe Brendan loved this episode as well for all of the horror that it had, and just we all know Brendan has played the game as well. Just going into that, and don't worry, we won't
many times.
We won't cover any spoilers or anything like that. In the beginning, just like all the past episodes, we'll talk about any future spoilers for potentially season 2, especially with this being the penultimate episode of this season and everything. We'll cover all that at the end. But I am also joined by my lovely regular co-host, Aiden, or aka Aiden H Talks. How are we doing tonight, brother?
Doing good. About to talk about The Last of Us. Very painful and hard watch, but a very good, great episode, however you want to go about calling it. I absolutely love this episode. It brought out the tension. It brought out the fear. I like how you called it a horror, because it felt like a horror, it felt like a horror episode, a little Twilight Zone or whatever you want to call it. It was terrifying, and it leaves you in tears at the end of it. I didn't expect to, like I said, like we say every week, I feel like we always say, I knew it was coming, but man, it still got me. I feel like we've said that at least 5 times covering this show. But I mean, it's true. I knew it was coming and it still got me, at the very end. So again, a lot of emotions, a lot of action, a lot of Bella Ramsey just owning it again. If y'all needed a reminder, Ellie is her. Just in case you forgot, she is her. And so, yeah, it was fun, man. I'm excited to talk about this episode.
Exactly. I feel like that's what I've been saying the most so far throughout the entire show is like Bella Ramsey is doing their thing. And like, that is like, I got to give it to them. Like and I know I say it I say it in like almost every single one of my TikTok reviews, and I acknowledge that fact. But I mean, it just needs to be said that they are doing a fantastic job. And I love that they're proving everybody wrong. From the very beginning. And then I even had somebody comment on my TikTok review and said, I can't believe I ever doubted her casting. Those were their words, not mine. But yeah. I didn't want to like come back at them with any like aggression or anything like
that. You're better than me. You're way better than me. When they hate on Bella, I have to hold back. Like when I posted that clip of Ashley saying how much she loves Bella, that got like 800,000 views. And a lot of Bella hate, which is the worst part. I never turned off comments because I think it's important to educate people, for one. I also think it's important to be a light, to like allow for people to still share. Because for every hate Bella got in that comment section of mine, and that's where I talked about it in one of my recent posts, is like people can't deny the hate because I've seen it, and I've seen it thousands of times in one comment section. There was just as much praise. And I've seen people, like you've said, like, because I've also mentioned Bella in almost every review I've put out for every episode, because like every episode, it's like they blow my mind because they are Ellie. Yeah. And almost every week there's someone who says, I was wrong. And it's awesome to read. It's like, it's awesome to read that people are willing to learn.
Exactly. And that's part of the reason I didn't want to just like, I don't know, say something like, yeah, you bet your dumb ass was wrong or something like that, because I just didn't like they came to this revelation on their own, and I want them to like be happy with it now instead of just be like, damn. I mean, I do kind of want them to feel like I mean, depending on how they were judging it, like you could be skeptical about a casting going into a role. Like obviously, I was worried about with this show specifically. At first, I was actually worried about um, what's his name who plays Tommy? I forget.
Gabriel
I know
Luna.
Gabriel Luna. Yeah, I was worried
Oh,
because
yeah.
I've seen him in Agents of Shield, and I hadn't watched that Terminator movie that he was in. And yet Brendan also knows him from Agents of Shield because
I
he played
love
Ghost Rider in
Agents.
that show. And I was like, I mean, it's not too far off from Tommy. Like Tommy has that kind of rugged sort of behavior that I can't remember what that Ghost Rider's real name is. Is
Robbie
it Danny?
Reyes.
Robbie,
Robbie.
that's what it is. It wasn't too far of a cry or anything like that, but I was a little bit worried about it. But then he, from the very first 5 seconds in the first episode, proved me wrong. And so you can be skeptical about a casting, but that's the way people treated Bella after seeing them for the first time was absolutely appalling. It was the stuff they were saying, it was absolutely ridiculous. And even
Mhm.
continuing on, like, I mean, I guess it's all up to personal preference as to how it hits you, but I've seen some people say that even in this episode that the things that they say in here, Bella Ramsey, is not quite delivered the same way or as powerful as like Ashley Johnson's performance was with the game. And I disagree. There's only one time where I've agreed with that, and Aiden and I talked about it in a past episode. Was with the magazine scene. All like the dialogue there just kind of, I don't know. I think it was the dialogue and the way how fast it was delivered. I don't think it was on Bella Ramsey. It just felt a little bit off and didn't feel quite the same. And I know I don't want to also be the guy that just compares it to the game every damn second that I can. But I mean, it's an adaptation, you know. I think that comes with the territory to a certain degree. And so, and especially if we have two different works that are essentially the same story, you're gonna compare like which one did it a little bit better than the other and that kind of thing. But I think getting back to the original point, every time Bella has said something that Ashley Johnson has said, especially with emotional scenes, I think back to episode 6 with the argument between her and Joel. I stressed this to Aiden during the episode. Like, I loved her, like the way her voice cracks and that kind of and that thing. She does that a lot. I don't remember off the top of my head if she did it in this episode, but I loved every single delivery that
I have a
she
good
had in this episode.
delivery that I want to talk about later. But one thing I love about Bella and really also Pedro is I think Neil was the one who talked about this on the official HBO podcast. He mentioned that when they were giving them the scenes that are word for word from the game, they would try to encourage them to not watch it from the game because they are actors. They know how to act. They don't want them to be influenced by what's already been done. And I love that you can tell that. And that's where it's like when we mentioned like Bella not being exactly like Ashley during the magazine scene, it's because arguably outside of Gabriel Luna, none of them knew what their character sounded like or acted like outside of the little research that they probably did going into the role. They knew what was written, and I love that they did that because it makes it real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gabriel Luna played the game, right?
Yeah. Oh,
That's
he's
what
a
I thought.
huge fan of the games, which
That's
I
what I
love
thought.
that he got cast. Is like he went in, he's like talked about it since. He's like, I went in, I had to get it. And like he has Tommy's voice down perfectly. So I have to imagine as he played the Last of Us games, he just did all the voices with it because there's no doubt in my mind he could do a sick Troy impression as well.
That's true. I could see him doing that. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm loving that Bella's coming out and just absolutely every single time that they can just proving everybody wrong. And I hope with what little time actually that's future spoilers. I'm not going to talk about that. I'll talk about that at the end. But continuing on, we all love the episode. One thing I wanted to talk about before we just dive into it, I actually, a lot of people have been saying the pacing that they've had a problem with the show, and I won't lie, there's some moments in the show as a whole so far where it's been a little bit rushed, but this episode I've seen a lot of people say it was rushed. I completely disagree. It flowed completely naturally to me. I I've seen a lot of arguments about them hitting the key moments in this episode from the game. And they do, yes, they hit the key moments. And then in saying that, people would also say that in hitting all the key moments, they're missing the little things, like the tiny conversations that they had in the game during gameplay and stuff like that. A lot of people were pointing to the infected scene with David for this episode. And I don't know, Brendan, have you listened to the podcast episode for this one so far?
I have, yeah.
And the main reason people seem to be saying that about the infected scene is because they wanted to trust David more. They wanted to be like, oh, maybe this guy is kind of good if he's helping save Ellie and that kind of thing. But they explain very well in the podcast for those who did listen, why or the sort of replacement that had. And it was just the conversation that Ellie and David were having there. That was a much more fleshed out conversation than it was in the game, giving more background to David and who he was before the outbreak and stuff like that. And I believe in the podcast they mentioned that Ellie like leans in and like she's asking for more information from David. Like she is slowly starting to be interested in this story that he's telling and everything like that. Yeah, we're seeing that Ellie is trusting him. I understand let me be I know I'm bouncing around a different, like 1,000 miles a minute, so I apologize. But as far as the infected go in this show, trust me, I am on the same side of like, I think we should see more, just because of what they set up previously. And I talked about it in on TikTok, and I talked about it last week. So if you guys know what I'm mentioning with like the hive mind and everything like that, I very much think I wish we could see more of that. But in this instance, I think it was totally fine that wasn't here. I don't think that it was needed for Ellie and David to fight a gigantic bloater, especially knowing now that the bloater is as OP as it is in the show, you know? So
yeah,
I mean, it definitely, I feel like in that instance specifically, it definitely just served as more of a gameplay sequence in the game than it did a story moment. You know, it was just to make the player do something rather than doing anything for David and Ellie, other than the trust thing, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Everything else in this episode, I think they even got to dive a little bit deeper into David's group and their faith and their religious beliefs a little bit. And I think that's why I guess I struggle to agree with the people that say that this episode had pacing issues, at least with going too quickly. I even saw someone say that the interrogation scene with Joel was too rushed. It plays out exactly like the game. I don't think like there wasn't anything that happened too quickly there that didn't happen in the game. I don't know.
It's the fault of everyone playing the game, riding around on horses, fighting a horde of clickers, fighting off like people from David's group, fighting off all these like hunters and stuff like that. People getting so caught up in that they don't realize that the actual story time, like I already see people complaining about only 43 minutes for the final episode, which yes, to an extent, yeah, that does sound like a very short time. And I know it worries a lot of people, but you got to think like you take away a lot of that looting and, stuff that happens in that, last bit of the game, you take all that stuff out, you get about 43 minutes left of story. And it might be even less than that. I'm not sure. I haven't played the game in a while, but like I see people rebutting that statement with facts like that. And honestly, that's kind of what it all boils down to. And I feel like that's where a lot of the people, and that's kind of, I don't want to say a fault of making an adaptation, because it's not your fault. It's the people that are watching it that complain about that every week, whose fault it is that they can't just like kind of accept that and be like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, and I've said this before. All right, you're gonna make a Red Dead Redemption game. You're just gonna have whole episodes of them just riding on horseback like the whole time. Like,
it's gonna
what do you
be
want?
like 60 hours of TV episodes, and most of it is riding between all the
Exactly.
locations. It's gonna be
Just a
great. I can't
montage of
wait.
just riding on horses, and you're just sitting there like,
Multiple seasons, and you're just on
yeah,
the
dude.
horse, and that's it.
We're gonna come back and be like, yes, they just rode on horses again. That's about it. We'll see y'all next week. But like, that's about it. Like, you have so much stuff that requires gameplay that is more for a video game point of view, for an entertainment. Hey, we're gonna let you do something, and we're gonna let you shoot all these clickers or take out all these hunters, and then get back to a little bit of the story, and then go back to like looting and whatever. in a TV show, you can't really do that. You can't have a whole episode of Joel looting or just like taking cover and killing off hunters
What do
with
you
Ellie in the back.
mean? We can't have a whole episode looking for bandages
That's
and
what I'm
looking
saying.
for duct tape
Making
and looking for
making
cloth.
shivs.
That's
How am
one
I
thing
going to
I'm
make my
still waiting
Molotov
for.
cocktail? Like, what? I think a cool thing about the pacing in this episode and the whole show, to quote David, everything happens for a reason.
Oh no, dude.
Everything they do in the show, every scene they pull it for a reason. So like the
Yeah.
hotel scene way back in episode 2, they pull these things for a reason. And when they cut stuff, obviously, like knowing Neil and like what he's talked about, I'm sure it pains him to cut the stuff, but he knows what's important and he knows that everything he brings in needs to happen for a reason. And that includes making David the scariest person on the planet twice.
Successful. That was crazy. I
But
want
yeah,
to
that was
talk
my
about
take on it.
I want to talk about the end, what you just said, Aiden. Because I agree. I think we only have like about 40 some odd minutes left of actual story. But what my thing is and why I'm a little bit worried is that they're adding the stuff with Ellie's mom. And don't worry, that's not a spoiler, guys. That's in the post end of this episode teaser. They're adding the stuff with Ellie's mom, and I'm really interested in that. Obviously, because we never got anything like that in the game, and so I want to get as much of that as possible. And granted, I know it's an additory thing, and you can't ask for too much from stuff that they're adding out of the kindness of their heart in a way. I get, because it's not needed. We know it's not needed. The story works without it. It's worked this long without it. I'm sure the show would have worked without it as well. But I'm just trying to fit that story in and flesh that out as much as I would like it to, as well as everything that happens without spoiling anything, everything that happens in the final episode. I don't know. I'm worried I'm not going to get enough of this thing that, I mean, I am super interested in the very end, but I'm also very, very interested in everything with Ellie's mom. I want to get as much of that as possible. And there's rumors that there's going to be a slight little story between Ellie's mom and Marlene as well.
Well,
and so
we know
there's
there's we know there's a story between them because last time I played The Last of Us Part 1, I went through during a certain portion and I was reading every note possible. And I don't want to talk about the portion necessarily, but we know that Marlene and Anna, who is Ellie's mom, knew each other, obviously, because Marlene became Ellie's caretaker. But Marlene writes in a journal, and I doubt they'll do this in the show. She writes to Anna still, even 14 years later. I forgot how old Ellie was for a second. It was like, but like, it's going to be interesting because it's going to show why Marlene cared about Anna so much. And I've always wondered that. And I've always wondered, like, there's so many questions about like Anna and Ellie that I've always wondered. And we're going to kind of I think they're going to touch on the answers, but leave it open-ended because it almost needs to be open-ended. Like, you can't close every book from the game.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't close Ish.
Yeah.
So I think they referenced Ish in this episode. And it's a big old Ish theory. Like, it's an existing theory to where I've had it and some dude in 2014 posted it on Reddit, and that's it.
I can't wait to hear because I didn't catch that this episode. I can't wait to hear.
Me neither.
Yeah.
I think I'll talk about it later as we go through bit by bit.
One thing that what did you say? There was one thing that you said that stuck out to me. Oh yeah, they don't want to close the book. I think you're absolutely right. And I think they're even trying to like tease like that they are going to end the book, but I don't think they actually will. Like just showing in the post episode teaser for next week, showing the stalker running at Ellie's mom. I feel like they're trying to set up that like she gets bit while she's giving birth to Ellie or something. But and that's what they want us to think, that's how Ellie's immune. I don't think I would like that. I hope they don't hammer that home as that's why Ellie's immune. I would much rather leave it open-ended like you're saying, because I mean I agree. I don't think that you can close too many open books from the game and not like upset the fan base in some way. And so I think they're very knowledgeable of that as well. I don't think they'll try to step on that at all.
I think that's why they didn't do anything else with Ish and characters like that. And I'm going to talk about Ish later as well, because that deals with the theory. But Neil, like, he knows what happened with all of these things. So, like, he's showing that restraint to not just, like, blurt it all out in the show. I think that's impressive. Because if I had created, well, for one, I'd be very rich if I had created The Last of Us. Wouldn't that be nice? But, like, I would be telling everything. Like, I would have spin-offs on spin-offs on spin-offs. We would know more about a certain character next week that some fans despise than anyone would have wished.
We would have had
Dude,
Factions
honestly,
4 by now
Exactly.
if Brendan had made it.
There's a way we could see some of that stuff. We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
But yeah, Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, jumping straight into the episode. We open with a snowy filled resort. It is wintertime. Obviously, we know from the last couple of episodes. But it looks like the winter is getting to its peak in severity. But we open with this large group in this big restaurant style area. With a giant sign that says, "When we are in need, he shall provide." And this was, I didn't know this was in the game. I never caught that for some. I literally, because like it's such a missable thing for me. Like, because you're all on my focus is because you're playing as Ellie in this section. My focus is trying to get the hell out of there. I didn't when I walked in there, I looked around and looked for supplies, but as soon as I found a full med kit, I was like, this is probably
Something bad's about to
come on.
happen.
This is probably crazy happening right now. But then I just go straight to the door, and then obviously the fight ensues. But I never noticed that banner in the back in the back of the restaurant. And somebody actually mentioned that in my TikTok comments. Because I talked about how David's group was going to be more faith-based and religious based in this episode. But I didn't even catch that they already sort of were in the game, but I just missed it.
Yeah. This opening scene, it was so chilling, and honestly, I don't know why I didn't realize that this was, which I mean, hindsight's 2020, but looking back, knowing that this was the man that was, which we'll find out later on in the episode, the man that was killed by Joel is this girl's father, who comes back in a very weird way later on. He comes back in a
Very scrumptious way.
Gee.
Very tasty little tease to the future of the episode.
And so I'm surprised I didn't realize what was going on here already.
One thing I love. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
One thing I love about the show is like they've done this twice now, where they've teased stuff from The Last of Us Part 2 with new characters. Kathleen in episodes, what was it, 4 and 5? Kathleen in episodes 4 and 5. Have to mention my queen Melanie Linsky because I love her. And then with this episode, I'm not gonna say what it is, but you both, and if you've played The Last of Us 2, you know what it's kind of like toying at.
Well,
there's an idea that they're dropping on us.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm wondering if we're talking about the same thing, but it's crazy because last week we kind of got a little nod to a character by a character that looked like another character if you pick up what I'm putting down. This week they kind of did the same thing where I'm like, are y'all doing this on purpose? Because this character sure does look a lot like a certain somebody. And when I saw it, dude, I jotted it down in my notes.
Literally, the second we saw that character, I was like, is this their face model? I literally almost went to Google. I was like,
it's crazy, bro. It's crazy.
I have to think that's why she got the part as well. Like, I'm sure like they were like going through like the extras and they were like, wait a minute.
Ever since episode 6, bro, they just want to keep dropping in like people that look like future characters. But continuing on, we get our first shot of Troy Baker, who plays who is the voice actor as well as the motion cap actor for Joel in the original game. As his character James, here we get his first shot in watching David give his sermon to this entire group of people. And as soon as this girl starts asking all sorts of questions like, when are we going to bury my dad? When she asked
they
that,
buried him. All right.
No, that's the thing. I was like, because when she said that, and then we got to like the end of or later on, I knew they were cannibals, but I just didn't know that they were. I had immediately assumed that they were killing people that were already alive just to eat them. I didn't even think that they were eating the dead already, which I guess brownie points for them, I guess, for not just
Good
killing
job,
people just to
guys.
eat them.
Good job, guys. You're eating
Uh,
the right people.
so then like I'm thinking like, damn, what was David gonna do at that point? Like when spring came along, or when it was not when it wasn't winter anymore, and like she's like, can we bury my dad now? He's like, oh,
Oh,
that's
he's
crazy.
buried. He's buried all right.
Well, by that point, he's become the plants around them. He's become fertilizer by
Oh
then.
jeez.
Dude, but the crazier thing was that I didn't even pick up on that. Like when he said it's too cold right now, we'll bury him later. Because what I what I was thinking was that, oh, okay, he mentions to Troy Baker's character, to James, the character of James, he says, well, some of the people out there, I think maybe James told David, some people out there said they saw some deer. And I think one of the others said, well, people like to,
See what they want to
see what
see.
they want, yeah, whenever they're hungry or whatever. So I was assuming that they were kind of on their last, like they were kind of on their last bits of food, and that they were
Oh, they
gonna
absolutely were.
eventually, yeah, but I thought they were gonna eventually get to the killing and eating humans. I didn't know that they had already been doing it. And so that's why I was like, oh, okay, like they're gonna bury her dad in the summer. This is just kind of like a wholesome, like little sad opening, whatever. And then you get to the scene where Joel breaks in later on in the episode and sees all those, and then it all clicks, and you're like, "Oh, they're eating her dad right now. They're already past all of this."
Yeah.
And so I was like under a whole different impression.
And it's even and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but it's even more like this, not discouraging, but this maybe disheartening in a way, but like watching them all just devour
They
their
were
food,
going down.
hearing all the
It was
spoons hit the
crazy.
bowls, everything.
They were
Yeah,
moving so
dude.
fast. I was like, my
Yeah.
goodness, they are eating their old friends. And I love in that scene that, like, the people who knew, they saw David bring in a deer in that scene, and they know if I had waited like an hour, I'd
I
be
wouldn't
having
have to be
venison right
eating this
now.
right now.
For real, bro.
But we follow David and James outside of this little restaurant, and they have a little discussion talking about James's lack of faith, as well as the ongoing food crisis here at their little community. Um, James assures David that he still believes, and they decide that they're going to go hunting. Then we cut back to Joel and Ellie in the basement. Ellie is trying to do whatever she can to keep Joel alive, giving him some water by having to put it on his lips, which is crazy. He won't stay conscious for more than a couple of minutes at a time, and he just won't eat anything at all. And she's trying to feed him whatever this looks like. I want to say dried fruit or jerky or something. I don't know. Ellie's mowing down though. But then Ellie decides I needed to go out and try to find us some food. And then she herself also goes out hunting. And you can imagine what is going to happen next. Thankfully, as we're following Ellie, she finds a deer out out wandering, and in this moment, I honestly thought she was gonna miss. Just like thinking back to last episode or 2 episodes ago now, episode 6, when Joel's trying to teach her how to shoot, and she just misses the target every single time. I also, little side note, sucks that it wasn't a bow. Really sucks that it wasn't a bow. I wanted to be a
Yeah,
bow
dude.
so bad, but TV, I get it. Um, but she sees a deer, ends up hitting it. It runs off, and then we cut away to find that David and James have found the deer, and they're looking around to see where the deer is now collapsed. Excuse me. They have found the deer, and they're looking around to see if anybody, the person who shot it, is around. And then
You're
Ellie
trying to
sneaks.
figure out who had done it.
Okay.
You'll get that later. That was a better
Okay.
joke in my
Yeah,
head.
right.
I was like, wait, what? I was like, okay,
Oh dear, why did I joke that one?
Jeez,
But
it just keeps going.
I have Ellie's joke book right here. And this is just like the
Imagine
reject pages.
he whips it up.
This is the rejects.
But then Ellie sneaks up on these guys. says a couple iconic lines. I'll put one right between your eyes, and that goes double for Buddy Boy over there. When she said Buddy Boy, I had the biggest smile on my face. I was like, damn,
So
yeah,
good,
talk,
dude.
yo, talk, Ellie. Let's go. And they talked about this a little bit on the podcast. That like Bella actually struggled holding this gun up for so long, for so many takes.
Yeah.
And I believe that they said that Bella the next day, like their arms were sore and everything like that from having to hold up the gun for so
Aw.
long. And I like it because it shows you can see that she struggles, like the gun falls down a bit and she has to raise it back up. But
Mhm.
as they mentioned in the podcast, also David sees right through that, and he's trying to distract her a little bit and mentioning how, hey, let's go. Or sorry, I skipped over a point. He sent James to go back to their little community and get some medicine because that is the only thing that Ellie is willing to trade the deer that she shot for. And so I like the little line that David's like, it's not code, James, go get it. It adds a little tiny little bit of depth to the community. Like they do speak in code sometimes whenever they need to.
Mhm.
But James runs off. David mentions how it's a 6-mile trek there and back to get the medicine. So it should be a little while. And he recommends that him and Ellie find shelter in this little nearby building. And so he drags the deer over to the building, and then Ellie and David sit down and have a ominous conversation about fate in the world. Everything happens for a reason, and a little bit of David's past. I love the way that I don't know the actor who plays David, but I love the way that Scott Shepherd. Thank you, Brendan's on it.
There you go.
I love the way that he delivered the whole not long, but the little monologue of everything happens for a reason. You see, I sent some guys out to a town, that whole thing. And I especially love how he delivered everything happens for a reason at the end. I love that. Like that is perfectly creepy for him, for David and for this character. And go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, which I'm sure we'll get a little bit into it later, but just since we moved this part, the fact that James was kind of hesitant to leave David alone with Ellie in the first place, and to where he was kind of like, are you sure? Like, you sure you want to send me out there and basically stay alone with her? And then another moment later on, when it comes down to them actually finding her, and how the group was actually wanting to kill her and possibly spare her from David, which is just another chilling moment that I didn't really pick up on, but I saw a lot of other people talking about how David told him, hey, keep her alive, and I want her back alive. And where I think they look at James, or James looks at one of them and says, do it, just do it, get it over with, because we're gonna save this little girl. Like, we're gonna have to like put a bullet in her, but this is probably the better option than to leaving her with David. So I thought that was like another nice touch too.
Also, just to know that like they're so pissed off about the guy that Joel killed that like even though Joel's the one that did it, they want to kill this girl too.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
It does a good job humanizing the enemies we encounter in the show, and in the games they like to do this too. We all know a certain enemy who they really humanize well in The Last of Us Part 2. One thing I really liked about the David scene is the amount of backstory they added to David. Like, well, one thing I didn't like is someone who is studying to become an educator.
I knew that's what it was gonna be.
I was in class 2 days ago, and me and the professor, we were talking about The Last of Us. I was shocked she watched the show. And I was like, I was so mad they made him a teacher. And she was like, I know. Why would they do that to us?
Imagine Brendan watching like, God damn it. Why the hell did they do that?
We all know,
goes and changes his major.
Master Cortez, he texted me during that.
I really did it.
Oh.
So, now it's awkward. Yeah.
That's so funny. That's so...
Just
It's
like the
just
eye emoji, side eye, just like,
yeah,
Brendan, you want some of this?
it was like for me watching David say that just because like the creepy teacher stereotype, but also like it fits David like too well. He's a manipulator,
Mhm.
and like sometimes you gotta manipulate a kid to learn. Now,
Yeah.
David might have taken that a step too far. Just a little.
Dude, and they mix like, I'm not gonna say the best of both worlds. They mix the worst of both worlds, like both of the stereotypes of like a preacher, a pastor, and a teacher, like the two worst. And the fact that he sits there and says the cordyceps set me free. And I saw somebody on Twitter, I didn't pick this up, so I'm totally stealing it from them. But I saw them mention about that maybe he meant the cordyceps set him free because then he was finally able to go through with all of this stuff, being a cannibal, doing the things that he does with kids, because it's a lawless world now, and no one is, unfortunately, no one's going to be there to stop him. And so a lot of people said that maybe that's another reason why he said the cordyceps set him free, and just makes him even worse. Like every new little tidbit I read about him, I'm like, God damn, this is like the worst villain ever, worst
And
antagonist.
one addition to David I also like, going back to my theory from earlier. So David mentions that he is from Pittsburgh, and obviously, if you've played the games, we know Pittsburgh is one of the QZs we go to. And myself and one person on Reddit from 2014 had a
Oh,
theory about Ish, who was from right outside of Pittsburgh. We know that Ish is the only one who knows how the infected got into their base. And immediately he starts making the moves on his co-protector's wife, but he also has a base that he set up that's full of children. Yeah, one thing I've read, and I don't have any proof outside of like the Last of Us wiki, is that they planned an Ish note to be in the Colorado Mall in the Left Behind DLC, and they cut it, but they never said why. And so me and this one person from 2014 on Reddit had the theory of, is Ish David? Because there are parts that
oh,
line up to that. He's a survivor. He forces himself into protector roles. He has a weird thing for children in both of his bases and camps. And based on the cut-ish note, which is technically not canon, which is probably why it's not canon, is because there is a clear connection of how did Ish end up in Colorado. I think that if that note's canon, Ish is either a member of David's gang, killed by David's gang at some point, or became David. And I think that Neil probably knows a lot of fan theories. I have no way of knowing if he knows this one because I've like not seen anyone mention it, and it could just be a little tiny reference to the Pittsburgh QZ. But it's interesting that it follows the exact same map progression that theory says David had to have gone from Pittsburgh to across the QZs and then ending up in Colorado.
That's
And
true.
it just makes David creepier, and Ish is already creepy. I think Ish did it. Like, how did he know?
He
I
let
think he
them.
left the door open. He planned
Yeah.
it all out. He wanted to make moves on what's his name's wife, and it just backfired because she was so depressed after losing her kids. I think that, not to like dive too deep into fan theories, it'd be really interesting to not know, but I also like thinking that she probably did not survive leaving Pittsburgh and died of her own will, and David was left with a ton of kids. Well,
mm.
I actually really like that theory. That might be my own headcanon now.
yeah, that's my little headcanon that I'm gonna
Yeah.
send to Neil Druckmann for The Last of Us Part 3. I'm gonna be like, you guys said you need a story. Here's a spinoff. You're
Do it.
welcome.
Yeah. DM him. DM him. What's the
Yeah,
worst
I'm
that can
just gonna
happen?
No,
slide
yeah.
slide into his DMs, be like, hey Neil,
Hey,
funny
Neil.
running into you here.
Let him follow. He might follow you. I like that. That'd be sick. But as they're having this conversation, Ellie and David reveals that he thinks everything happens for a reason, and he ends up revealing that he knows that Joel, well, he doesn't know that it's Joel, but he knows that the man that Ellie was traveling with is the guy that killed one of their members.
And one thing
Go
he
ahead.
says that I love is he calls him the crazy man. And that is literally a blink and you miss it piece of dialogue from this section in the games, because when David's men go after Joel, and when they first see him, they scream, "It's the crazy man from the university." And so I love that they kept that with David, because it shows that Joel is considered by some terrible people to be absolutely insane. And I love that,
Really?
because it makes it interesting, because like we see Joel from his perspective most of the game, and we find out that like everyone else views Joel as a maniac.
Yeah.
Yeah, and rightfully so. In the game, he's a tank. He's crazy. Well, I guess I just said it, but
There you go.
as they're having that conversation, once he finishes up and lets her know that he knows, James walks in and has a gun pointed at Ellie, and David tells James to put the gun down. Ellie turns around, points the gun at him, and David's like, James, give her the medicine. And James is very hesitant at first, but he throws her the medicine. Ellie tells him to back away, and Ellie runs off without even taking half of the deer like she originally said that she wanted to do. She just wanted to get out of there and go get the medicine to Joel. And then James is like, "You're just gonna let her get away?" And then David just looks at him, and we cut back to Ellie trying to save Joel. And to me, I don't know anything about medicine. Listen now, I don't know anything about medicine, but I was looking at her stuffing that syringe full. I was like, that's a lot. Is that a normal amount? Is that okay? But I like it though. I like that that's what is happening here, because like that's what would happen. She's a 14-year-old girl. She has no idea what she's doing aside from like the little things that I'm sure the federal schools taught her, which like probably consisted of stitching up Joel like she did previously. But like she doesn't know how much she needs to give Joel. And so giving him like a heaping wad of penicillin multiple times, she did it twice. It was just like, it's funny, but it makes sense. And I like it. So,
I mean, bro, that penicillin, that shit was like super soldier serum or something, bro. Like that, it was. I saw someone say the penicillin was working overtime, bro. I was like, hell yeah, it was, dude.
Went crazy. But as we continue on, we cut back to, Ellie. I definitely want to mention this. Ellie lays down with Joel, in the basement under the blanket, or she might be on top of it. It doesn't really matter. She lays down with Joel, and then we cut back to David's little community in the kitchen where they are cooking up dinner for everybody. And the character that we were mentioning earlier, that looks like a character from part 2, which we'll talk about at the end, walks in and says, "These are the last couple of cans of, I think it's tomato sauce." It looks like she slides over. And then this third man walks in and puts down this tub of meat. And she asks, "What is it?"
Meat.
And he says, "Venison." And they all stand there awkwardly for a very awkward amount of time, leading us to believe it isn't really venison. And we'll find out more about that later. But as we continue on, David and James walk back in as they're serving dinner, and they throw the deer down on the floor. This next part is wild to me. I did not see this coming at all. When he walked up to the little girl and just smacked her. Oh my God, I was in awe. I mean, it's David. Like, it's not out of character for him, but it's just like, I just didn't see that coming at all. But this little girl speaks up while David is speaking and says that the little girl says that they should kill Joel and Ellie for what they did to her dad. Understandably, she's mad. Just like everybody needs to understand about a certain character with part 2. But
Back that up later.
David walks over, smacks this girl, and she all the way to the floor, hits her so hard that she flies down to the floor. And they mentioned this in the podcast, the way her mom stands up, and then David just turns over and he's like, "Sit down. I got this." About her own kid. "I will handle this situation with your kid." Like that. And then not only that, but she goes over and then gets him dinner, like gets him a plate of dinner. I was like, yo, he has them conditioned. This is crazy, dude. This is like, I don't even. I have no words.
And didn't somebody say that his he had like a way more meat on his plate than like a
No,
lot of
yep.
people in there? And they were saying that, like, one, obviously, like, so he's a psycho effed up cannibal, but two, the person that commented this said that it could just show that he doesn't really care about this group all that much to even like give out the portions equally. He just has a big old plate for himself and then just a whole bunch of little ones around everyone else. Um,
Mhm.
and so yeah, I thought that was a neat touch too.
I think with the slap, one thing they mentioned on the official podcast is David makes her reach for his hand to get back up. And they talk about how, like, with David, they wanted to portray him as like someone who's gaslighting. He is conditioning these people to fear him, but
Mm-hmm.
also have to rely on him. And he even goes as far as to say, "You still have a father.
Oh,
I'm
oh,
still here. I am providing for you. I'm providing for all of you. I am all of your father." Like, one thing we kind of find out later in the episode is like David doesn't actually believe the scriptures he's preaching, and he views himself as the god to them. And I think in the games it's the same way. He views himself as that sovereign person that they all look up to as a deity. It's just David to David. David just sees himself.
Yeah. And he touches on it in this episode. He says, like, they're all sheep and I'm like their shepherd. And
Scott
so,
Shepherd, the
the
shepherd.
Scott Shepherd. There you
yeah.
go.
And no, that's a great point. And that's why I think I like not that they dive too deep into it, I guess, but I like the addition and the further explanation of this group and their um, faith and their religious beliefs, because I think it adds more to David's character of narcissism and ego and all those sort of things. I think it inflates it even more to make him even worse, and they successfully made him worse in the show. But then, yeah, as Brendan mentioned, he makes the girl take his hand back, and then he helps her back up, says, like, you always have a dad, all that sort of thing, like we just mentioned. And so then they decide it's time to eat after saying grace. And everybody, like we mentioned before, just wails into this food, not even knowing what's in it because they're so starving. And it sucks because we know what's in it. But then we cut to Ellie and Joel back in the basement. And I love this so much because we get another little snippet of my favorite soundtrack from part 2, Allowed to Be Happy. It's very, very brief. It's a lot more prevalent at the end of episode 2, which I loved so much. But we get little beats of it in this little scene here. Where Ellie gives Joel another heaping shot of penicillin.
Yeah, whatever works, dude. She's
Probably
like I
not
said,
even 12 hours later or anything. I mean, I don't know how again, I don't know how it works, but like that's a lot.
it's just so funny seeing her always just go back again. It's just like, all right, here we go again. Just a whole bunch of penicillin.
Right where he got stabbed too. Like, oh my
Dude,
gosh.
so funny. And great
Um,
prosthetic work. Ugh, it looked
Truly.
rough.
Yeah, no, yeah, that the cut and everything, I like how it's just like a flap. Like, that's just I hated that.
Ugh, yeah.
But Ellie walks outside after giving him some more penicillin to get some water for the horse. And as she's outside, she sees some crows fly away from a nearby area. And she gets skeptical and goes to go check it out. And she sees that David is leading a group of men looking for her, Angel. Then we cut to following James or David in that group. And James is questioning. He doesn't mean to question his sense of authority, but he's trying to convince David that they don't need to bring Ellie back, and that Ellie would just be another mouth to feed. We can just let her go. We don't even have to kill her. And then David insists if we leave her out here, she's gonna die. And then James says maybe it's God's will, and then that really gets to David, makes him stop for a second. But then the entire group keeps walking, and then we cut down to Ellie putting a knife in Joel's hand, trying to wake him up eagerly, saying, there's guys outside. If somebody comes down here, fucking kill them. I love that so much. Like he's barely conscious. If anybody comes down here, you fucking kill them.
Dude, did you see somebody did the math and said that he earned about approximately $60,000 to lay on a mattress for 3 episodes?
Or $600,000 per episode.
Yeah,
He's
dude.
making
That's
bank in
insane.
season 1. He's one of the highest paid actors on TV for this season, and I think he was paying for the whole work. And I think one thing I love is when they paid him that, a lot of people are like, "Is Pedro Pascal worth that much?" And you see the amount of interest he alone has brought to this show, and like HBO made one of the best investments of casting an actor they could have. Like,
Hell yeah. He's worth
it
more
worked
than
out.
that, matter of fact.
He is worth way
Dude,
more than
and
that.
he's bringing in bank from
The
Mando. Like, bro,
Mandalorian. Right now, he is
this first
making
half,
so much money.
I was just out
bro.
and about today, and on a like how the TVs wherever and like some places just have random stuff playing. They were playing Wonder Woman 1984 or whatever it's called, and I seeing him, I was like, oh man, that was I love Pedro Pascal,
Yeah,
because like he
life
was
is good,
like one of the best parts about that movie,
but it
and
can be
so
better.
yeah, life is
Yeah.
good, but it can be better.
And I like it, kind of like Pedro Pascal has had that. Like back when he was playing Maxwell Lord, life is good, but it can be better because he's now going to win an Emmy.
Oh
He'll win
yeah.
everything for playing Joel.
Dude, I
Seriously.
think both of them could bag an Emmy, dude.
I
On
think
top of like some other stuff.
they're
think
gonna
you're
have to
gonna
go
bag
against each other
3.
for
They're
best.
gonna bag 3 of the big acting awards at various award shows because I think Nick Offerman. I think you're gonna have the most nominated actors, kind of like where White Lotus the last couple of years has always had multiple people in the same category. I think we're gonna see that with The Last of Us, where we're gonna have Nick Offerman competing against Scott Shepherd, and we're gonna have Murray Bartlett competing against them as well, and we're gonna have Bella competing with a ton of other HBO actors and actresses, and you're gonna have Pedro competing. I think Gabriel Luna could be up for stuff. It's just gonna be the Last of Us award sweep, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
awesome.
When
I
are the
can't
Emmys?
wait.
They're in like the
They're
summertime,
in the
right? Like
summer, right?
I got
June.
no idea.
Yeah,
That's what I
something like
thought.
that.
Because I remember it was a big.
Better Call Saul
wasn't that
sweep.
Yeah, I remember it wasn't that
Yeah.
big a deal, but I remember I was a little disappointed that The Boys season 3 wasn't going to be part of it. Not that
Yeah.
I don't think they would have won anything crazy, but I mean it was a fantastic season of TV. But anyway, getting off track. Ellie also tells Joel, I'm going to try to lead them away. Lead them away from the house, which I mean, granted they were going to go door to door anyway, but I love how when she comes out on the horse, they're like past the house. They're like way down there. And then she gets their attention. It's like, all right, Ellie, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, I guess, but they're a little bit of ways away. But I love how Troy Baker's character was the one to take down the horse.
He got that amazing running scene, and then he got to
Yeah.
take down the horse. I love that they mentioned that on the podcast. So clearly, it was like they had to give him the scene of him like hurdling stuff to get to the shooting spot.
Gotta keep him fit,
Yeah, he was doing his sprint from The Last of Us motion capture, I'm sure. They were just like, remember when we made you like sprint on a treadmill probably and track your movement? What if we do that in real life?
Dude, damn good actor. He was killing it.
No, yeah, I would.
Dude.
That's
It
I
was so
wish we got
fun.
more with him.
He was actually killing Callus in that scene. He wasn't killing it.
Yeah, and then later on, he gets the killing. But yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there.
But after he shot Callus, and Ellie went flying, Ellie passed out, and him and a bunch of other guys walked up to her, and they insisted for James to shoot her, and he was about to do it, but then David walks up, shoots his gun in the air, and gets their attention, tells them to stop, and David picks Ellie up, tells 2 of them. This one made me laugh too, bro. He said, 2 of you come with me, drag the horse. You want 2 guys to drag that big horse all the way back to the community?
It's because he doesn't care about them. That's where it's like they hammer it home in like the next couple scenes. It's like he literally does not care about any of these people. Like he talks about how they're all sheep to him. He doesn't care. Like that's where it's like it makes how he cares about Ellie so much creepier because like he views literally a girl he's barely known as his equal just because she isn't what he's used to, and it's pretty safe to assume he probably abused the women at that camp as well. So he's literally taking the first opportunity he has gotten to be a creep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such
Um,
a
and
piece of
I
shit.
truly, I saw leading up to this week's episode, a bunch of people were thinking that in the interrogation scene, Troy Baker's character was going to be interrogated, tortured. Yeah, tortured. I couldn't think of the word, but and I thought that was going to happen for a second, because when David said 3 of you stay and look between houses, or however many he said, and I thought for some reason I thought Troy Baker's character was staying. Like I
I
didn't
thought he
think that
was
he was.
too. I'm
Yeah, I
glad
was
I
like,
wasn't the only
man,
one.
it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
I feel like
But
he probably told them, if y'all are gonna kill me, I want to go out to Bella Ramsey. I want Ellie to be the one to be there and do it in like the most graphic way. I want it to be with Ellie. I feel like Troy Baker would have probably wanted to stay away from Joel, and Pedro Pascal as Joel. Like just from I don't know. I can just see him being like, you know what, I'm gonna let him do his thing. I don't want to share any scenes with him. I'll stay away from him.
fair enough.
But I don't know, but maybe I'm completely wrong, but yeah, I could just imagine him being like, I want her to take me out. I want her to be the one to drive the butcher's knife in my throat.
But then we follow one guy into the house that Joel and Ellie were staying in. He notices a wardrobe covering the door that Ellie left behind, which I honestly thought the guy wasn't going to see it, but I mean, hey, whatever. He goes down there, down into the basement after moving the wardrobe, and Joel comes out from behind a water heater, I believe, or behind a dresser or something, and stabs the guy in the neck. And they mentioned this in the official podcast, that after Joel stabs him, like that was like his physical exertion for that moment. Like he couldn't do anything else. So he falls down with that guy, just slowly falls on top of him and then lays next to him. I think they said that he had like the best death in the episode or something just because of that. They said they had to do that like a couple of times. They did like multiple takes with that. Yeah.
Interesting.
And so I was like, just watching the blood curdle up in his mouth and then onto the floor was a wild scene for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But then we cut to Ellie waking up in the cage, which if you've played the game, this is a very oh no moment for me anyway. It was just because I know all the disgusting traits of David are about to finally show their ugly head, rear their ugly head. But yeah, Ellie wakes up. She's a little disoriented. David's giving her this speech about you're pretty tough and you can't survive on your own. You should let me help you. You could be a part of this community, and I could protect you. All the sort of same dumb stuff. And then he leaves off the conversation. If you can't find a way to trust me, then yes, you are alone. And we cut back to another guy that's looking around the houses for Joel, and he finds his homie down on the ground, seemingly unconscious. And as soon as he finds him, Joel snatches that guy up and knocks him out too. And if you've played the game, you know what's coming. You're getting happy. Then we cut back inside the house, and Joel is just going to town on these
amazing scene, bro.
Great scene. Played out just like the game. Almost actually not even almost, pretty much word for word.
Yeah.
But it was I think I love Pedro Pascal's delivery in all of this too, especially when he screams like,
yeah.
What does he say? He screams something.
What
He's
town?
like, where? What town? That's what it was. Yes.
Yeah.
What town? I love
Dude,
that so much.
I thought it was so funny. Everyone was like, everyone was already making the memes. I don't know if y'all seen the meme from Breaking Bad where he's like, nah, man, not my house. And he screams like super loud. And everyone was like, why did bro scream that so loud? And it was Joel being like, what town? It's so stupid.
You can add that and to like a Tess in episode 1 screaming Joel.
Oh, dude,
But yeah,
amazing.
Joel stabs this guy in the knee, and then he tells him to mark this place on the map, mark where he needs to go, and it better be the same place that your buddy points to. Um,
Mm.
And then right after the guy points there, he stabs him in the chest or in the sternum. And while his buddy's back there freaking out, saying, "No, he told you what you wanted. Um, I ain't telling you shit. Fuck you, man." And he's like, "That's okay. I believe him." And then continues to beat this guy to death. Then we cut back to Ellie where David left her in the cage and she's slowly trying to maneuver her way out by unscrewing a nut with just her fingers. Like that's got to be hard. I mean, unless it's super rusty or actually no, if it's rusty, it'd be worse. But if it's just already loose, I was like, damn, props to her. That's crazy. But you got to do what you got to do. And then as soon as David walks in, she sees something. We don't see what she sees yet. And David slides over her some food. And then he's wondering what she's freaking out about. And he turns over and sees a human ear left on the floor. And Ellie is horrified. She immediately knows that they are eating people. And David goes into, yes, only a few of us know. I would have told you later on, still trying to solidify that trust with her, that fake trust. I would have told you eventually. Shut your ass up, man. Stupid little stupid man. And then he goes on his self-righteous speech about I have to protect these people. I have to do what I can to keep them alive. And then this is something that they touched on in the podcast as well. And I've talked about this a little bit in past episodes. Ellie and her sense of violence. In the official podcast, they mentioned that David talks about her violent heart, and he would know because he has a violent heart too, which we know that. And again, this is all building Ellie with part 2 Ellie in mind, without saying any spoilers. They are building this Ellie very much with part 2 Ellie in mind, and I enjoy that very much. As long as we're still keeping the core of Ellie there, because that was, I know you haven't been here, Brendan. That was one of my things that I've said, because part of what makes part 2 so damaging to me for Ellie's sake is knowing like all this violence that she's, without no spoil, I'm not going to tell you why she's violent, for all this violence that she's dishing out, knowing that she wasn't typically, she wasn't like this, she wasn't always like this. And part of that ending of part 2 is what helped solidify that for me, was like realizing everything that she's done and what she's lost in herself along that way. And so my hesitation has been so far with setting her up like this, setting her up to be inherently violent, is that she won't feel like she lost that. She won't feel like she lost a part of herself later on. And I do think there's still elements of her, and they even showed in episode 4 after she had to shoot that guy in the back. Like she was horrified that she I think she cried after that happened. And so that's the stuff that I like, while still adding the elements of that violent heart within her. And they mentioned in the podcast, David's not wrong that she has a violent heart. She is definitely a much better person than he is, a much better overall, but she does have those violent tendencies in that violent heart.
And one thing I love about how they're giving her like the setup to The Last of Us 2 is one of the criticism. Well, not, I don't know if it's a criticism. It's a criticism I have of Joel mainly, is that like he, I'm trying to figure out how I say this without any spoilers. He doesn't see his negative impact on Ellie in anything that he did except for one thing. And one of the negative impacts, and we see it in The Last of Us 2. I've made a TikTok about it. How the interrogation scene sets up a very specific moment in The Last of Us Part 2 where Ellie, playing The Last of Us Part 2. And I think one thing I love about the show is they've shown us Ellie is fascinated by violence, but also violence Joel is committing to protect her. And that violent heart is being stoked not only by David's making her on edge and making her angry and fearful, but Joel's protection, the way he is violent, and I don't think in the games, I don't think he ever realizes, that impact. But I think that the show is kind of showing it to us that there was that impact there, and they don't ever touch on that in the games, really.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting.
Yeah. They're
I think
I
fleshing
hope
Joel
that was
out.
spoiler free. I
Yeah,
tried
yeah, no,
really
you're
hard to
good.
not like.
yeah.
You're good. But yeah, they're fleshing Joel out a lot in the show compared to like in the game. And honestly, I'm so here for it. I love it. There's so much things that I can go through and dissect in every major plot point in every episode we've gotten, like the episode 3, episode 5, episode 7, or I mean episode 6. There's just so much things happening that they're setting up that ending so well. Um, and like me and Charlie, and like Charlie's been saying all this time, they're building this show up with season 2 in mind, with the character arcs that all of them go through already in mind. While they were making The Last of Us Part 1, I doubt that they were going at it with already knowing what's going to happen in Part 2. But now that obviously the game has already come out and they're making this show live action, they know what they're doing. They know where these characters start and where they end so far. Holding on for Part 3, Last of Us Part 3. But they know where they end so far. And so it's nice to see how they're kind of maneuvering that and what they're doing different, and things that they're adding, such as Joel's panic attacks, freezing up, and him admitting that to Tommy. Whereas in The Last of Us Part 2, it was just a nod with anxiety pills on his desk. Never really outright stated, hey, I'm freezing up. I'm getting too fucking old. I can't take care of this girl anymore and keep her safe. And so I like what they're doing with the show. They're fleshing that stuff out more, with events of Part 2 in mind, and even the events of this show, what happens next episode, and the finale with that. And so I just love what they're doing with Joel, and you can kind of see it with Ellie too, which is why I have faith in them. I feel like they kind of know what they're doing, setting them up, and I feel like we'll see a lot of that culminate next episode as well, especially with events that have just happened 1 through 7, or I mean 1 through 8.
Yeah. Part of what I'm liking so far, going into this specifically, is going to this finale, excuse me, specifically, is that Joel stuff that you mentioned. And especially after this episode, this just being another notch on the I failed her thread that he has going on. Like, it's just going to make what happens just so much more impactful. For him, it's going to make much more sense for him and his feeling that he's doing the right thing. And so I like that.
Yeah.
For his character. Now, my thoughts on it, we'll get to that next week. But continuing the episode, Ellie's still in the cage. David is slowly mentioning how he views the cordyceps, and how its only goal is to spread. It does it with violence if it has to, but overall it loves. And I like this specifically because it calls back to episode 2 and sort of why Tess was further infected than she already was, with the whole kiss thing. The cordyceps love, as stupid as David is, like he was right about this,
Yeah.
with
I don't
just
think
the way it.
I don't think he's stupid. I
Well,
think
I just mean like stupid as like his.
yeah. Stupid as like we hate. Like his mindset here is so evil, but also like it's so well. I don't know if well crafted is the right word, but he has waited for the moment that he could tell someone this master plan for years. This idea that the cordyceps are what because like he talks about, I found scripture and that's what made me who I am today. But in reality, he found the world of the cordyceps, and he found that they show love. And he quotes stuff that like people will often say about like Christianity's God is like, he surrounds you with love. He brings you in as a member of a family. And the cordyceps, I mean, that parallel that they do the same thing is genius. And I have to think that was Craig Mazin, because that seems like, because like those like little additions that aren't from the games a lot of time. That's Craig Mazin, and he's a genius writer. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys know, this is totally off topic. He's writing the Borderlands movie.
I
Oh,
didn't know that.
wow.
So
I didn't know
like
that. I
I'm
was not
ready
excited for the Borderlands movie. Now I am. That's
until
cool.
now. You weren't excited for Lydia Tarr to be in the
Well,
Borderlands movie?
just
That's
I don't know, the
crazy.
casting choices for me. The casting choices for me were like Kevin Hart is that's so
Oh yeah,
weird
I
to
hate
me.
that one. But like
Kate,
Kate
but Kate
Blanchett
Blanchett though,
as a
that's what I
Lilith
was
is
He's
on.
gonna bring her
amazing.
all
Yeah.
every single time that she's in
Yeah.
something, bro.
I was
Kate
in it for Kate
Blanchett.
Blanchett. She was like the saving grace for
Absolutely.
me.
And Jack Black as Claptrap, I feel like was good.
That's
Like
true too.
as
I
far
guess,
as
yeah.
like okay,
Especially
back
with
to
how
the
he's playing Bowser so far, it looks like.
yeah.
Are we
mean,
not gonna talk
yeah.
about Bobby Lee, the all-time GOAT, Bobby Lee? Come on, this is
Man,
so
it's-
weird,
yeah.
dude.
But back to
It's-
The Last of Us, that game we are actually talking about. Unless we want to make this a Borderlands episode, we can just switch it all the way up.
I'm down.
I think isn't Troy Baker in
He's in the
Tales of the
Tales from the Border.
Borderline?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say we could just talk about that the whole rest of the way.
Is it Ashley Johnson in that too, or am I tripping?
Is she? I have no.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm gonna look it up later. But the cordyceps being that like idea of what Dave is preaching, and then you like think back to all of his preaching scenes and everything he said, and it makes everything just so crazy, and it adds to something I noticed at the end that is really interesting with David. And that like to touch on it is like there's a certain scene no one comes to help David. In the games, they're all helping David. No one goes to help, and I think it shows that like he calls them sheep, and sheep are notoriously like as far as like the intelligence of an animal goes, sheep are not the smartest, but I think it shows that they are more than sheep and they actually like, kind of understand what's going on, which I think is cool.
I
Yeah,
like that as well.
and his head is so far up his ass playing God and trying to play God and thinking that he is like the one that shall be followed and all this dumb, stuff that he's trying to preach, literally trying to preach, to where when it gets down to it and Ellie's over there just dogging or going ham, just yeah. Nobody's there to help him. They see a burning building and they don't bat an eye. They're just like, and you can also see it from his crew when they're walking around and, like I've mentioned before, them trying to kill off Ellie, even though he said to keep her alive, them knowing in their head, and even James being like, hey, don't you think we should just kind of leave her? Like, just let her be. And I don't think he's looking out for Ellie's safety. I don't think he truly means that's just a mouth to feed. I think he means, can we keep her the fuck away from you? Because, bro, we're not trying to see you do this over and over again. And this is weird. This is sick. And we can't do anything about it because you're you, to where when it gets down to it, nobody's there. And you can see hints of that sprinkled out throughout the episode.
Yeah.
But I will say I like that you brought that up because I did see some people taking criticism to that. They were like, well, where's everybody at the end of this? Like, I saw some dude, he wears an A24 hat. I forget his name, but he always wears an A24 hat in all of his videos on TikTok. And he had a lot of criticisms with the episode. And he did say he liked it. He did say he liked the majority of it. Like, I'm not trying to expose him or anything. He makes great content.
Let's expose this guy.
He said he didn't like an episode. Let's talk crap about him. No, but he did say that it got down to where like that there's a burning building, and he was like, where's everybody at? Like, there's nobody to be found. There's nobody around here. And that was one of his criticisms with it. And I never stopped to think, which I didn't think much about it. I just kind of scrolled afterwards. But I never stopped to think, oh, maybe nobody wanted to help him. Maybe everyone knew exactly what was going on. It was like, nah.
I also think you could mention that like to them, they see the fire and they see it burning. Oh, that building's burning. We can't stop it. That's God's will.
Yeah.
And so they're leaving David and they're just doing what he taught them. Like, believe in David in place of God. And it's like, we believe in David, and like, if this is going to happen, it's going to happen. And unbeknownst to them, the fire isn't really what takes out David,
Yeah.
There's an act of humanity that takes out David, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. Very well said.
We continue with the episode. David is after his whole cordyceps conversation, he mentioned how all of these people are sheep and he is a shepherd and all he wants is an equal. And he thinks Ellie is that equal. And so then he starts whispering sweet nothings into her ear, talking about, I can make them stop looking for your friend. They listen to me. They follow me. You and I can cultivate a future here. We can grow, support our people. He reaches his hand onto the bars, and then Ellie puts hers next to his, catching on to what he's getting at. And then he puts his hand on top of hers and she says, oh, and that was the confirmation for her that she knows exactly what this disgusting person wants. And she uses that opportunity to break his fucking finger and tries to grab the keys from him. They fall to the floor. She couldn't quite get to him. He bangs her head into the bars of the cage a couple of times, and her nose and face are just gushing with blood after that. And then she hadn't revealed her name to David yet. And David goes to leave the room and he said, like, you had your chance and all that sort of, or whatever he says. And then right before he walks out, Ellie says, Ellie. And he says, what? Tell them Ellie is the little girl who broke your fucking finger.
And I love what he says next. Yeah, one of my favorite quotes in the game, because I think it's directly from the game too, is like, how did you put it? Tiny pieces?
Yeah.
That's like one of, in my opinion, like outside of like the blatant creepy pedophilic lines of David, my favorite creepy line of David is when he like turns to say, you said tiny pieces, and just walks away. Because like we cut right back to Joel, and it's like the first time you're playing, it's like, oh my goodness, is she about to get cut into tiny pieces? I hope there isn't a awesome moment and great excuse she has to distract them.
Up her sleeve, literally.
And I think both of you guys have seen this already, but people have taken screen grabs. So when she has her head up on the bars, yelling, "Tell them Ellie is the person who broke your fucking finger." People are taking screen grabs of her looking like that and then comparing it to the cover art of Last of Us Part 2, which I love so much. Love that so much because it literally looks just like it. And I love all other than like there's a bit more blood, but I mean that's just semantics. It doesn't matter. David walks out of the room, leaves Ellie in the cage. We cut to Joel walking through a slight little bit of a snowstorm, trying to find his way to find Ellie. Comes across this building with blood pouring on the snow outside, walks inside, finds Callus dead inside, and finds Ellie's bag as well on the shelf. Rest in peace, Callus. But as Joel is exploring this building a little bit more, he walks around some canoes and he sees 3 bodies hanging upside down, draining blood. And that was that's a moment in the game, but I believe it's like in a meat freezer where they have them set up in the game. Yeah.
And it's like really close to like how it's done in the game almost, because we find Ellie's stuff like right before that, and then we like turn the corner and it's just like that like room of bodies, and it's insane.
Yeah.
And like when you're playing like the new, like I think in all versions, like the physics when you bump into the bodies, if you like accidentally bump into them, it just makes it even more eerie. And I kind of wish that Joel would have had to walk through it like he does in the game, because they force you to walk through a room.
Yeah.
It's the only way out of a room.
That's crazy.
It would have been nuts to see, like, well, because you'd have bumped into some nuts. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm happy they didn't do it the exact same as the game, though, in that scene, because it's like another one of those where it's an awesome action scene in the game. It's not a necessary part of the story. And I love what they do is like with the next scene, like, not to like spoil it, they keep it going instead of cutting back and forth like they do in the game, because they cut again after that scene and then we cut to Ellie in the game. It's the way they cut in the game I've never been a fan of, because it's back forth.
Yeah.
The show does a really good job of, after the next scene with Ellie, we stay with Ellie.
Right.
The whole rest of the episode is Ellie, and I love that.
Yeah. But yeah, speaking of cuts, we cut to
Speaking of cuts.
we cut to that was good actually.
There you go.
We cut to Ellie in the cage, and James and David come storming in. They grab her and they are pulling her over to the table. But as she's being pulled over to the table, she makes the quick thinking decision to bite David on the hand. And as they throw her onto the table and are about to start chopping her to tiny pieces, she screams, "I'm infected." And they stop and they examine her bite and they don't believe it. At least David doesn't believe it. James does. And then right before David stopped to look at it, he slammed the cleaver down onto the table right next to Ellie's head. And then with a moment of opportunity, while they're sat there wondering what they should do, Ellie grabs it and swings it at James's neck, killing David. Bye Troy Baker, killed by Ellie herself. Then Ellie runs off. David tries to take a couple of shots at her. She runs into I don't think this is the same restaurant that they all have
It's
the
the same
food, or
one.
is it? Is it?
It's the
Okay.
exact same one. I
It is?
love this change, and I've always found it stupid that it's 2 separate locations across the town in the
Yeah,
game,
that's true.
because why would you so they prepare the meat across town and they just take it all the way there? Like, I love that it's now the basement of a restaurant because that makes sense. Like, it's a
Yeah.
restaurant. You'd think they'd keep it to one location.
There you go. It's the details. It's the details.
Yeah, it's the
That's
small
true. That's
stuff.
true. It really is. But as she runs into this restaurant, she finds where a fire had been going or is going. I don't know. She pulls out a hot piece of wood with still with some charring and burning on the tip of it. She waits for David to come out of the door. She throws it at David. She misses or he ducks, either one, and it lands right next to a curtain and it lights it on fire. And slowly the building starts to be engulfed in flames as David is walking around looking for Ellie, taunting her with some horrific words. Oh my God. When he said, what did he say? He said, I was going to kill you or something like that, but no, I've decided I'm going to keep you. Just like that wording is fucking like, oh my God, dude, I'm going to keep you and I'm going to teach you. Like, holy shit.
I
This
like
guy's,
that. Well, I don't like what he said. I
I mean,
like they
yeah, no,
change
yeah.
it from the games because in the games, he's still gonna kill her. Like he's going to do something to her that's terrible in the games. But he's gonna kill her right afterwards, and he makes that clear during the fight scene. Like he's not playing any games. He's going to rape her and then he's going to kill her.
Yeah.
And then he's gonna get out of a burning building probably. But a machete might get. Well, actually, in the show, I like this too. It's the exact same cleaver from the basement now, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I like because like a machete, I don't know, it just something about a 14-year-old girl swinging a machete works a lot better in a video game than it does in a TV show. So I like
It
the
also
change as well.
spit better. It's a really cool connection, like using what's physically there on the set. And I feel like it's one of those things you do with a show like this is like where they've changed some of the weapons up, like the bow we mentioned earlier. The only reason Ellie has the bow at this point in the games is because of the Left Behind DLC, and they didn't do them all Left Behind part. So of course she didn't have a bow, so they had to use what they had.
Yeah.
And none of them were carrying a machete going into that. So using the cleaver, I thought that was genius. Like I was just like, it's simple like production design and like continuity, but it was such. It's like those small details are important. Like when you really want to sell a show, and HBO outside of the coffee cup blunders they are known for, are really good at keeping that and having the sets built that way.
Yeah.
To where it's practical.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed.
But as David's walking around the room talking to her, asking her, "Are you just that special? How'd you pull off the fake bite thing?" And he's just still. This is what hammered home for me. Like he's like that. Believes he's a wonderful, beautiful person. He's like that classic nice guy persona. I'm a nice guy. I just can't, find women. Can't find a date. Whatever. Like this was the embodiment of that when he said, "You don't know how good I am." I was like, bro. What is wrong with you in every fucking way? You don't know what I could have given you. But the place
trying
is
to play
still,
God, trying to
No,
play God, trying to be narcissistic,
yeah,
or be
exactly.
narcissistic. Yeah.
The building is still burning down. David's looking around for Ellie. Ellie is hidden. And he says the disgusting line that I already mentioned. But then Ellie sneaks out from behind wherever she's hiding, stabs him in the side. He throws her to her head to the ground, slamming it on the ground. She's disoriented for a second, but sees the cleaver on the ground. She starts crawling for it. He kicks her over, and I don't even know if I really want to describe the rest of what's happening here. Other than I will describe Ellie's part. He gets on top of her, says some disgusting stuff, and I can't think of the word. Implying that he's going to rape her, and he says that he loves the part where they struggle. And as he's on top of her, Ellie grabs the cleaver and hits him, knocks him off, and then she runs over, gets on top of him, absolutely goes to town. I'm in my TikTok review. I like this more than I like it in the game. This specific part, because I love how they let us sit with it much longer. There's even a point, and I think they mentioned in the podcast that like she slows down and then starts right back up again and starts going ham all over again. I love that. I love that so much. There's the part that I don't like as much is when Joel starts consoling her, and I'll talk about that when we get to that in a second. But this I thought was beautiful. The framing was the same. Speaking of that, I saw somebody complaining about that on Twitter. I just feel like you're just complaining to complain.
Up.
Like, oh my God, dog. I even, speaking of going back a little bit, this is still about the show. I saw somebody complain about the pacing, and they said it has the same pacing problems that all the MCU Disney Plus shows have.
I saw that, and I got so mad.
Dude, that was what is wrong with you? Do you know how to consume media? Like, that's insane if that's your actual take. That is crazy.
That's a horrendous take, bro.
Yeah, dude. Terrible.
Colossal L. Like the colossal L David was taking at that very moment. That sounds like a threat, but it was not meant to be a threat. Well, now it's too late. I'm gonna.
It's so funny you comparing David to someone that said that this has the same pacing problem as MCU. It's like, no, that's too far. That's too far. You're like,
but then we follow Ellie out of the building. She walks out into the snow and starts walking off covered in blood from everything that she just did to David. And as she's walking off, Joel comes up behind her and grabs her, and she starts freaking out because she doesn't know it's Joel right away. She notices it's Joel, and Joel starts to comfort her. Says, don't worry, baby girl, I got you. Love it so much. Then he takes off his jacket, gives it to her, and they walk off. And that is the end of the episode. So real quick, what I wanted to say specifically that I didn't quite love about this so much that I liked it a little bit more in the game. I saw some people saying that they didn't like it because they wanted Joel to see what Ellie did. I don't agree with that necessarily. My whole thing with this is mostly the music. I think the music took away from it for me. I think the music was severely lacking here. I don't necessarily need the same exact music that was present in the game. I wouldn't complain if it was, but I just think the music choice here, like the lot more somber, just the humming music that they use quite frequently, I just don't think that was quite the right music choice for this scene. It was still a hard-hitting scene. It still rang true for me, but it was just, I don't know, it wasn't as impactful as it was the first time I ever experienced it. Not that, and again, I know I've already experienced it, so it's like it's a little wishy-washy if I can even replicate that sort of experience. But the show already has done that on multiple occasions with certain things. So like, I know it's possible. And so I just think the music here was what was lacking for me.
And I think one thing they've done with the emotional scenes that are like almost like violent and leave you like, what on earth just happened? So like Sam and Henry's death, they use different music. But the scenes where they use different music, I think it creates a almost like a lived in experience, because when we experience it as a player, when I'm playing this game with this, this controller for the people on a podcast, because you would not be able to see that. When when I'm playing on a controller, when I'm watching it on a screen as the player, I'm experiencing it almost, even though I'm the one controlling it, I'm experiencing it almost secondhand. It's already predetermined. The music's predetermined. It's all lines of code, that are triggered at certain prompts. I think with the show, creating this music that almost brings you into the scene because it's almost dull on purpose because it's kind of making you like feel like you're there. And I think it's still the amazing composer who's first Gustavo
Gustavo
Santaolalla,
Santaolalla, yeah.
yeah, who is composing those, and I think it just brings you into the scene. Like, even though it's not the same music or it's not as impactful, it's like still, and it's doesn't have a lot going on to it, but it puts you there because it makes it real. Because to them, there's no sound.
Right.
It's just Joel like sneaking up on a little girl. It's kind of creepy. I don't know why he didn't just yell. Like, hey,
Dude,
is
and
after the trauma she just went through, he's just like, let me sneak up on her
yeah,
as
I
she
know, right?
escapes a burning building. That sounds like a good idea.
See, and that's what I kind of liked more about the game. Whereas, like, she's in the building, she's going ham on David, and then Joel kind of gets her, and she's like, "No, get off me!" And he's like, "It's me, it's me."
Yeah,
And in here, they kind of let her walk outside, but you still need that moment where Joel is taking her by surprise. You can't have Joel be like,
right.
"Ellie, Ellie, come here, come here," because then there's no like, "Get off me, get off me." So you have to have that moment, and the only way you can have that moment is if Joel basically just sneak attacks
Sneaks
her,
up,
like
but yeah.
sneaks up on her. And it's
Yeah.
just like, I don't know, like
He
whenever I saw her
plays the
walk
worst
outside,
prank at the worst time.
basically, and you're like, I was like, oh man, he's just not gonna say
Yeah.
anything right, and he
And
doesn't. I was like,
there's a practical reason to why they switched it, and that they mention it on the official podcast is how did Joel get in there? In the
yeah.
games, it's implied he went in the same way Ellie did the back door. We don't
Mhm.
see the back door in the show. All we know is the only way out for Ellie is the keys that are on David, and the door is locked. She already tried the door. So yeah, Joel has no way in. So of course it
Yeah.
has to be outside. And I think they did a good job, like the tracking shot of Ellie leaving and the music that's almost void of like the tunes of the games that kind of like set us in her mind frame or her mindset of like what just happened. I will never be the same again. Like when like something really bad happens to you, you feel that pit in your stomach, and you just like your ears ring and nothing makes sense, and your brain is going a million miles an hour. It's something they do in The Last of Us Part Two. Like literally, they have you hear the ears ringing. Your vision kind of gets blurry almost at times in these moments. They do it in The Last of Us Part Two, and I don't know why that's what I'm thinking of, but like I guess same character. Not to spoil anything. But they kind of just make this connection of this experience is going to change me forever. And that tracking shot, we never see her face until Joel sneaks up on her, and we know exactly what she's feeling just from the way she walks, the way she moves, the sound, the music, everything. It just sets this mindset that Ellie has going into the next episode. If you've played the games, you know that like at the start of this portion of the games, Ellie is really just like walking around. She's just there. She's in her mind way more. And this tracking shot and the music and how they did it shows us that beginning portions of she's where Ellie is constantly talking your ear off in the games. Now she's thinking. She's thinking to herself. She's far more quiet. She has much more to process to like try and cope. She doesn't have a therapist. She has nothing but her brain, her cordyceps filled brain.
Yeah, I actually I agree. I agree with you. The music, especially sounding hollow, it definitely works for the scene. Um, I guess just for me, it just didn't work as quite as much as I wished it would have. But since that
Did
brings
you
us to the end of
cry?
the oh yeah, no,
Okay,
I
okay,
cried, I
but
cried.
I
Yeah,
didn't cry. I swear it's like crazy. I, d-
really?
I don't know if you guys have seen me in Discord and on Twitter. I post my crying. I take
Oh
a
yeah,
picture
yeah,
when I start to
yeah.
cry because like well, like the first time was like episode 1 I cried, episode 2 I didn't cry, episode 3 I cried for literally like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like,
I think we all did.
my Spotify Wrapped is going to totally be long time on top because of that night.
Dude, I was just listening to that like on the way home.
Oh, I know.
'cause,
I listen to it so often now.
yeah, I was listening
Like,
to it on the way home just now. Like just
just
casually.
yeah, casually crying as I'm doing 80 on the highway trying to get home,
Bunch of
Yeah.
fanboys here, bro. It's crazy. Couldn't
Yeah.
be me.
Dude.
I'm just kidding.
But I didn't
but-
cry this time, and I was shocked. Like, remember, like last week I
Wow.
cried. Like, I just think, like, I just felt the moment without, like, that's where I think Bella's acting is amazing. Is I felt hollow, but I didn't feel like crying because Ellie, she doesn't cry in that scene. In the game, she starts to tear up. In the show, she doesn't really start to tear up. Like, it's starting to well up, but like, it's just a moment. Like, it's like
yeah.
that life-changing moment, and they did such a good job. Bella did such a good job bringing us, the viewer, into that moment with them. Like, in the games, we don't really get that necessarily the same way because we shift right back to Joel right after that.
True.
Yeah.
They keep the focus on Ellie going out of this episode, and I assume going in the next episode, they'll focus more on Joel. But, like, everyone watching a show, they're going to be like, how's Ellie dealing with this? And I think they'll do that more because in the games, Ellie deals with this in a certain way that's not the way Ellie has dealt with anything before in the show and in the game. And I think
Yeah.
they'll do a better job kind of reflecting that because, like, when you're playing, you kind of start to notice. It's like this girl who was talking to me all through Pittsburgh is like a zombie.
Silent. Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
just walking around.
Yeah.
Ellie, I'm
It's
talking.
very
to you.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
love how they conveyed that with gameplay too, with the ladder
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But that's a conversation for the next little second, because now that the episode's over, if you have not experienced this story before or have not experienced The Last of Us Part 2 story before, now is your time to click off the podcast. We thank you so much for listening. Brendan, thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to tell everybody where they can find you, that would be glorious.
Well, you can find me on TikTok at Dan.bren. You can find me on YouTube at Dan.bren. And that's it. Please don't come to my house and try and find me. That would scare me. I would go all Ellie on you with a cleaver and everything. So please don't.
He has a video coming out soon about Joel, his deep dive into
It's-
Joel. And so
It's a very deep dive.
yeah.
So much so that I've delayed it because it's like it's so hard to process because that's where it's humanizing to Joel, but it's also so hypercritical of Joel, and I think it's important to be critical of Joel that no one ever really does. But I want to make
100%
sure I want to make sure I wrote it right. That's where because it's dealing with so many big issues, and I think like there are so many buzzwords that I try to avoid, but I have to bring up. So like I'll tease the buzzword of the video is
okay.
toxic masculinity,
Okay.
and
Look
I
at
have
us.
to make sure I have to make sure I write that right because I don't want to just drop the word toxic masculinity because when I just say it right now, the first thought would be, "Oh, this is stupid. What do you mean?" But you have to explain it, and so like it's
Yeah.
important to me that I do the best I can.
Right.
But once I've done the best I can, you can expect understanding Joel later this
And
month.
why he's right.
Oh,
Well,
Everything. Nah,
I
I'm
can't-
kidding,
well,
I'm
I
kidding,
can't
I'm
wait till next
kidding.
week. Nah, he
I'm
ain't kidding. He
I'm
ain't kidding. He ain't kidding, chat. He ain't kidding. Next week is gonna
Dude.
be crazy.
I'm
Next
I'm
week's
excited
be
for that,
nuts.
dude. I'm excited for that for real because I really like I've told Charlie this before. Like when I was younger, I'd watch video essays. Yeah, I'd watch video essays over like it would just be something simple. I forget, man, and I freaking forget the name now, but there was a couple of main ones that I really ramping up to was it Endgame? They all did one perfect Marvel
Yeah,
scene.
one perfect. Yeah.
And I loved those, bro, so much. But it would always be something like kind of short, simple, and ambiguous, and right to the point. It'd be like for example, what Brendan's doing, like understanding Tony Stark, in Iron Man, and it would or something just real cute, simple, and short. And so I've always loved listening to, or even just like understanding this character, or like why is this character the way, or analyzing evil. I don't know if y'all seen those videos, and they'll analyze the evil of certain characters like Gustavo Fring or Homelander, and they'll analyze what makes them evil or stuff like that. So I'm very excited. Yeah, dude. For sure. Not only check that out, but send that straight to me once you do post it, because I want to check that out as well.
Yeah, I might have to send you guys the script. I might need some people to like
Double check
add
it.
some
Yeah.
input, because like it's such a big topic, like criticizing Joel, because you'll get the dude bros going after you, which is why I was hesitant in the past, because I've had this idea since like 2020, back when I was doing YouTube. Like I wrote the first original draft of this video like after playing The Last of Us Part 2. And I just, I moved to TikTok because YouTube just took so long, and now, but I'm kind of moving back to YouTube a little bit and doing a little bit of everything. I want to revisit that, and I want to revisit Abby, and I want to revisit Ellie, and kind of like almost like make it into a series of just like deep dives into these characters and their brains, because I think it's important to pick their brains, especially Joel's. I think Joel's is such an important brain to pick because it impacts so much of the story, and I worry that I'll do it injustice if I try to do it, write it on Tuesday, record it on Thursday, edit it on Friday, release it on Sunday. I'd rather spend the next week or two just like really absorbing, like even if I try to replay the games themselves, just to like do extra research. I want to do justice to Joel, but I also want to destroy. No, I want to make sure that my points about him, my toxic points that point to like the negatives of Joel, have reason, because there are a lot of negatives, and the show has done a really good job helping me point out some of those negatives. But that's also like, anytime you bring up a negative of a fan favorite character, or like, can we talk spoilers at this point?
Yeah, we can get. Well, we can get.
Let me just
get out if you haven't played The Last of Us. Leave them a like and then leave. No.
Let me say, if you've gotten this far, thank you guys so much. If you're on YouTube, drop a sub, hit the notification bell so you don't miss our uploads. Hit the like button, please. We super appreciate it. If you're on a podcast listening platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever they are, please give us a good review. We're good for it. You're good to give it to us. So please, we appreciate it, and we will see you for next week's episode.
Creed 3, our most recent episode. Go listen to that. It's an absolute banger. Yes. Yeah. And spoiler talk in 3, 2, 1, bang.
So I'll try to be really quick about this. I feel so bad for making you guys do the outro just to make my bad.
We were already doing it.
Okay, good.
We're good.
So like when you criticize Joel or you take a golf club to his face, it'll make people mad.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to know how to navigate that mad, because I think that because one, I read all my comments, and like where you mentioned like way earlier in the episode, like you weren't like attacking people for switching up.
I do.
I have a hard time not being like chippy back at people or snarky back at people, just because like, I don't know, I read it. If I'm going to read it, I read every comment I get on every platform. And on some of my videos, I get a lot of snarky comments that I really want to be very mean towards. And a lot of them revolve around Joel.
It's the snarky ones, bro. It's always the snarky comments.
And I love being snarky back. Or like if someone's like, I like being funny too in my comments. Like, and like, I just want like one person, like I like when I'll like say something like really, like to respond to someone's like stupid criticism, like say something funny, and one of my mutuals like likes to comment. That makes me so happy. That's where I know it's like, oh, I was funny that time.
I was funny that time.
Dude, yeah. Oh, I love liking like someone I'm following. If someone replies, like if one of my mutuals replies to somebody in a comment section, kind of putting them in check, I'll leave it a little like. I'll be like, I see you, I notice you.
No, that's
so if y'all ever do that, expect me to be there liking it up. If I see it.
No, yeah, I'm super excited to see that, because like Aiden, I used to love watching film essay videos. Actually, the one I was super into for a while was High Top Films. Not
High
gonna lie.
Top Films, that's who it was. I felt
Oh,
so bad
okay.
I couldn't remember his name, dude.
No, yeah, that's why I didn't agree with his Spider-Man Homecoming
Yeah.
video. I still love Homecoming, but his Far From Home one, I was like, yo, you kind of spitting here low key to some points. But
Yeah.
no, yeah, and that one Marvelous Scene thing, I was a huge fan of that stuff. So going
Oh.
into this, and I've watched a bunch of Last of Us ones as well, obviously. And so I think you're absolutely right. I don't think I've seen anybody dive into all of the negatives that Joel has committed and been
And a
a
little
part of.
positives, a little bit of positives were
Yeah,
in
you
there.
know, you can't shit on him the whole
Yeah,
time, you know.
no, there were
Otherwise,
a little bit of
yeah.
positives. It's like I'll try and summarize a little bit of the points. This way I can get them out, like so I can see your faces. If they make no sense, then I know I should probably really rewrite this episode. But like with Joel, right? He meant so in episode 3 of The Last of Us, Bill mentions that Joel is a protector and he's a protector of people, and he forces himself into situations where he has to protect people.
Yep.
For example, the end of The Last of Us game, and I think his biggest crime isn't that he killed the entire Fireflies and prevented the cure. I think his lie is the biggest crime. Now, obviously, it's the biggest crime for Abby is that he killed all the Fireflies and their dad.
And
But the lie to Ellie just perpetuates this toxic masculinity and this controlling nature of Joel that I've seen some people bring up in like TikTok comments, and I agree with it because like Joel doesn't even realize it, how controlling he is throughout the Last of Us game. And I don't even know if Neil Druckmann even realized it when he was writing it. I think he probably did. I think Haley Gross realized it in what she wrote with The Last of Us Part 2. But I think it's important to look at it because Joel is like, he is a crazy man. He is not meant to be sane. He's not a hero. And I think a lot of people, like, when they defend every action of Joel, and I'm not saying you can't defend every action of Joel, I think we forget like who the guy is.
Yeah.
He has a lot of negative character type or characteristics that fit his character because he's not perfect. Like he's not Nathan Drake, where Nathan Drake's not perfect, but like Nathan Drake's considered the good guy, even though he's murdered like thousands of people at this point.
Yeah.
Crazy guy. But it's just it's hard to also like write that because like you know what I mean? Like when you say stuff like that, like about Joel, it's like
It's easy to
I think
take people off guard.
yeah,
It's easy to
exactly. It
really
takes
knock them
people
off their
off guard,
side.
like when you hit him with a golf club. They just
Yeah.
catch it. And I have
Yeah.
no. This is my version of the leak of The Last of Us 2, is me talking about it before I make the video.
I think it's very it depends on who it gets to, the type of person it is, because I think it's very engaging, it's very grabbing of a concept and a very like controversial thing to say 100%. And depending on who hears it, they'll either hear that and go, I want to hear more. I want to hear why you think that. I don't agree with it, but I want to hear why you think that, and maybe I will agree with it. Or you'll get the people that are like, fuck you, you're wrong. I'm not watching this. Dislike the video. I'm
Those are
done.
the people I'm expecting, you know?
And either
Yeah.
way, it pushes the video out. So
Yeah, I just read
it,
it. Like
yeah.
self-esteem down, views up. That's all that matters, right?
There you go. I have mentioned this to Charlie before because we have talked about Joel quite a bit in our spoiler sections all throughout this season, and how his decision makes him more human. And also how there really is nobody good in the game. Like everybody you encounter has kind of done something messed up. I mean, unless I'm missing a few, but like just on the surface, there's a lot of people that are very, very, very flawed. And just off the top, Tommy, Joel, Ellie, Abby's father. Like that's just a few. And I'm sure there's some solid ones, but I don't doubt that at all. But
Bear was
it's like
solid.
it's hard to it is hard to
Rest in peace, Bear. I think about that a lot. I
Oh,
keep seeing it on TikTok. I don't know why. Like, I made a comment on one of these posts, like saying I hate the dog violence in The Last of Us 2, and now the algorithm has showed me bears
yeah.
dying like daily. It's
Did you
driving
see
me
the one
mad.
where they were playing and they shot and they shot and killed him and then they were just going about their day and it was like somebody killed bear and it's just like the pause.
Yeah.
and it was like, oh my god, it's like
Yeah.
this is me pausing, suddenly realizing what I just did. But yeah, like there's like a lot of our main, especially our main characters, are like heavily flawed, and if you can't sit there and accept that, um, I don't want to sit here and be like that Owen dude on TikTok. You're watching movies wrong.
Oh,
If
I
you're
hate
not
that
watching
guy.
them a certain way, you're watching
Sorry,
them
his
wrong.
name
I
is like Owen hates movies, but like he's the
Yeah.
most hateable part of his content.
Yeah.
Hey yo,
Yes,
he's never gonna
sir.
see this, so
No,
we're
yeah.
good.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, dude. But
Wouldn't that be
you know,
funny if he listens to this?
honestly, hey, what about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, what are you gonna do about it, Owen?
I don't want to sound like that, but like if you can't come to accept that, and if you can't come to accept that, and you keep going on to every video you see, every Joel edit, and you keep preaching that gospel that he did the right thing, that he's perfect, you know, you're kind of not getting the point here. Yeah, I'm not gonna say you're watching or consuming content wrong, but kind of are, and you're not getting the point of what's going on. And so I feel like the people that do understand that will definitely stay and watch the full thing, because if I see something like that, like I think I fell asleep the other day to a video about um, quote unquote why The Last of Us 2 didn't work, or how to kill a game, or how to whatever, just some toxic title, and he goes into a full in depth. And I just fell asleep watching it, just listening and just being like, okay, yeah, because I'm trying to see both sides. I can see both. I'm just dabbling in everything. And so I feel like there's people out there that will hear, hey, your favorite character is not a good person and did a horrible thing. And they'll be like, all right, I'll stick around. Let's see what he has to say. You know, there are people out there like that,
I
especially
don't even know
in
if
this fandom.
I don't even know if I'd specifically say he does it. I mean, he does terrible things, plural. But I think it's just like a character study of him and like
Yeah.
his mind, because like we talk about what he does, but we don't talk about what he thinks often. And that's what I'm looking at, is like understanding Joel, but understanding his brain,
Yeah.
kind of like getting into his mindset. Like I was talking about with like getting into Ellie's mindset through Bella, we get into Joel's mindset through how we perceive Joel's character. And so like the dialogue scene in The Last of Us 2, his lie to Ellie, basically every interaction he has with Ellie that has these undertones of like kind of controlling that we just don't even notice in the game. But when you like really like hyper analyze it, it's like, wait a minute.
No, yeah. I think even like you hit the nail on the head, because like you think about the opening to part 2 when he's telling Tommy what he did.
Yeah.
The way he describes it when Tommy asks him, "What did you do?" He's like, "I saved her. Like I did the right thing."
Yeah.
That he's in his mind. Yeah, you're. I think you're right in a sort of controlling controlling his environment and controlling his situations way, as well as Ellie to a certain extent. Because in his mind, I'm sure if they had that conversation back then, he would tell her, "I saved you. Like
Yeah.
I did what I needed to do, and you're alive because of that." And so I think you're hitting the nail on the head, right?
And I think it's important to mention that Joel doesn't know he's toxic in his behavior until Ellie starts to act out. And when Ellie starts to act out, so like with Seth, and this is one of the big things that I think points to this idea of Joel's just doesn't realize what he's doing is wrong towards Ellie. Like she knows it, because when he pushes Seth, and a lot of people say Joel did the right thing, I would have pushed Seth too. Like Joel's so toxic in his mindset that he doesn't realize that Ellie doesn't view him as, and that was a really controversial take. Ellie doesn't view Joel as dad. She views Joel as equal. Joel views Ellie as daughter. And that gap is so profound in why Joel thinks the way he thinks, why he pushes Seth over and he gets himself involved, is because he views himself as dad. And I think over time, Ellie kind of realizes that, oh, Joel viewed me a different way than I might have necessarily viewed him. I viewed him as my equal, and they are equals because Joel would have died in the winter section. And that's one of the points I make in the video or script, because it's not made yet. It has to actually be made. So is that like Ellie saved his life, Joel saves her life, it's vice versa. But in the definition of what equal means in that mindset of this world, they are each other's equal, even if Joel is a 50-year-old man and Ellie is a 14-year-old girl. Story-wise, what they do for each other is equal.
Yeah.
And it's just like a deep dive into like that small stuff. Like, why does Joel do these
Why
things?
does Joel? Yeah.
What is a Joel?
Why does Joel?
Yeah. Why does he do Joel things? No, yeah, dude, that'd be super interesting to take a listen to. I'm super looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah.
Now it's gonna like be really bad, and it's been like,
well, dude, I mean,
hyped
yeah,
up
you
or
could
described as terrible.
You could send it around, whatever. Like, I'm sure. I mean, probably not so much me, but I'm sure Charlie could give a lot of good insight into. I'd have to probably refresh my memory on a lot of things, but yeah, dude, sounds like a cool listen. Like I said, I'm open to all that stuff. I'll sit here and listen to anything, you know. Like I played a video that said why Thor: Love and Thunder, why this movie hates you. You know, do I really think Thor: Love and Thunder is that bad to where Taika actually hates you?
Yeah, he literally said no. It's in the post credit scene is like, this was made for you guys to hate. Owen, this was made for you to hate, man.
Owen, there you go. Owen, step into your role. But as for like spoilers from this episode, I really only had a couple. The main one I wanted to point out was Joel inadvertently killing someone's father, and how that's basically The Last of Us 2. Like they're setting those seeds in there. As soon as he comes out here and he was talking to the little girl, and she said, "Can we bury him already?" And then he brings it up later to Ellie and says, "Yeah, they killed a father, and now his daughter is not going to have anyone to come back home." It's already setting that in there, and it's just like you're already sprinkling those bits out, and then you're going to have him do what he does next episode, and just they're setting it up so well. I love it.
What I love about how they did it in this episode is her dad's not a good person, you know? Like Joel killed the dude who stabbed him, you know? But he still has a daughter, and that daughter is still gonna feel emotions and feel pain. And this is where like a lot of people say Jerry was stupid. I don't like Jerry. I don't think Abby. We shouldn't feel bad for Abby because Jerry was stupid. I think Jerry is stupid. I think Jerry's an idiot. I think Jerry planned. I think Jerry is sinister. I think Jerry knew that the cure was possible, and so he contaminated all the other doctors to where he was the only doctor who knew. I have a whole ton of theories on Jerry. I think he was not a good person, but he was still a dad.
Yeah.
Now, exactly. Obviously, he wasn't a good person. He was going to kill a little girl, but like, I think that Jerry, in general, might be a terrible human being. Worse than David. No, I'm kidding. But like Abby, it's still dad. That's still her father. Of course, Abby's gonna feel something. And like this girl in this episode, like her dad is a thug who stabbed Joel. In the game, he's a mindless enemy, right? And that's what Jerry is when we first meet him. Jerry is just NPC. A dude in between us and ending the game. I find it crazy, but that's a criticism of The Last of Us 2 is that they made Jerry. Like
it's like
Charlie, in my opinion, it's the dumbest criticism of The Last of Us 2 is that Jerry exists as a character.
Yeah, Charlie can attest to this. I've seen him go on the front lines talking about how you're just mindlessly killing NPCs all throughout The Last of Us, and then when it finally gets flipped onto you. And I even saw someone say, okay, imagine if we played all of The Last of Us Part 1 as Abby, and then we get to Part 2 and we see Ellie and Joel. You're gonna fucking hate these two characters. Like you're not gonna like these people. So it's all just perspective. But Charlie can attest to that.
Yeah. One thing I've always hated about Part 2 as a critique is like Joel stabbed Ellie's dad, but then Abby beat Joel to death for, we assume, like an hour or so long.
Here's the thing, though. I actually wrote about this in the video. No way. No, sorry. I wrote it, though. Joel never knows why Abby... I might even just pull up my script because it's like word for word what I'm about to say. Joel never finds out why Abby killed him.
Yeah.
All he knows is he deserves it, and he just wants her to get it over with. He's like, get it over with. She has worked for years. She got gains to kill Joel. And Joel's just like, get it over with. I'm done. Just do it.
Save your story.
She wants that moment. She's like,
Yeah.
I lost everything because of you. You're not just going to say, just kill me. And I think in my video or my script, I write, Joel with his missing kneecap is like, I'm not going anywhere. So I was like, get it over with. I'm not standing up and walking out. I'm not getting out of here. But Abby deserves, I don't want to say Abby deserves, but she deserves that like gratification of like,
because he didn't just take away her dad, he took away her life by killing most of the Fireflies. She had to go off and find her own life with a new life with, granted, she had Mel, Owen, and all those guys, but still for the majority, like they had to leave like Salt Lake City and by themselves and go find Seattle, find the WLF and a whole new cast, a whole new place for them. It's not just, and even then, even if you were to take that side out of it, it doesn't matter that Jerry was just stabbed. Like, she bottled these emotions up for years and years and years. And as Brendan mentioned, put some of that energy into the gym, into getting bigger, so she could absolutely demolish Joel the way that she felt that he deserved it, because he killed her fucking dad. Like, what the fuck? The dad, the only sense of family she has in this world, apart from, I guess, maybe Owen, she might consider Owen family, but like, what? I just don't.
After what happened on that boat, hey. I hate that scene. That scene, that's my only criticism of 2, is that scene. I skip it. Like, that's how much I hate it. I hate that scene. Oh, why? My least favorite in maybe any video game ever. Like, when I see the boat, it just hurts.
Bro, I saw a TikTok. Someone was playing the game. He's like, my brother's watching me play part 2, and it's a boat scene right now. And if he flipped the camera to himself, he was looking at his brother. He was like, hey, man.
Oh, dude. Isn't he just like standing at the edge of the bed?
Yeah, he's like standing.
So funny, dude. And they're like, I think bro wants to see it.
It's gonna be really awkward for these people watching with their parents. We get to a boat, and the people who know, like,
that's what. Yeah, dude. So funny, bro.
Perks of adulthood.
I don't know that I had anything specific to mention. I guess we can talk about the character that we were talking about earlier. The mom of the the wife of the man that Joel killed in the community. We were saying that looks a lot like Mel from part 2.
Literally Mel. That's like,
yeah, like Brendan said, that I would not be shocked if that was the actual like facial actress.
I haven't looked it up yet. I haven't seen anyone say that it's her though. But I also kind of like, this is gonna sound crazy. Like, I know that like Ashley Birch doesn't look anything like Mel necessarily from the games, but I'd love for Ashley Birch to play Mel in the show as well. Like, it'd be a little bit older than Mel in the games, but Mel's also like a little bit older than Abby, and I don't know how old Owen is.
Voices Aloy, right?
She voices Aloy, but she also voiced Mel, and I always feel like that's such a cool connection. Yeah, she voiced Mel. She's a good actress. I don't know if you guys have watched Mythic Quest. She's good in that show. I think that I think she'll cameo in season 2. I think that like Laura Bailey will cameo in season 2. I think Ashley Birch. I think
sorry to cut you off, but since we have you here, I think it was you that said, what was your theory about
my
Jerry?
Theory. I think my theory's been proven wrong based on leaks.
Oh, really?
But my theory was that Jerry was not going to be a he in the Last of Us show. Mm-hmm. It was going to be Jerry, as in Laura Bailey would be playing Jerry, Abby's mom. Because, I mean, if you guys have seen Jessica Jones and like Daredevil, Jerry can be, or Iron Fist, Jerry can be a girl's name. I was stopping that. So I thought that a cool theory would be to parallel that Ashley Johnson is playing Anna, you have Laura Bailey play Jerry. And so you have the parents of Ellie and Abby almost like Shakespearean mortal enemies in ways, and how they're written, like these Greek tragedy enemies for 2. Their parents are played by the people who first portrayed them in the games. From what I've heard, that's not going to happen, but it would have been really cool.
I think that's a really cool theory.
It's not like a leak necessarily. Like, the people who are saying that, like, someone asked if like, is Jerry, and it's like, Jerry is Jerry. So that makes me think that okay, it's gonna be a
Curious
white dude.
Jerry.
It's gonna be a white dude. So we know.
Some white middle-aged dude.
I wonder if it's just gonna be a random actor then, or if it's gonna be like someone that.
And that's what they were asking the viewer Anon, one of those like
VA.
accounts like that,
Yeah.
where it was like Jerry's Jerry, and I don't. They never addressed if there's any Abby references necessarily, but they said that Jerry's Jerry. Like it's not like as ambiguous as like the original Last of Us 2013 and 2014 remastered, where it's just a random NPC model. It will reflect Jerry in a way, I feel or assume based on that. Which means it's probably not Laura Bailey, because that would have been something they would have noted. Is like Laura Bailey shows up as Jerry Anderson.
Yeah. Because that would have been
cool.
Like
it would have been so cool. But I think Laura will show up. I don't know as who. I think I also mentioned the prophet of the Seraphites could be Laura Bailey, and I think that could happen. Like that'd be as cool because we
do you think they'll show that the prophet won't be dead off the bat?
I think they'll show the drawings for sure, but like with how they're expanding the world, and I think on the episode 3 official podcast, Craig mentioned the prophet by name and said that those are the characters that just like interest him. He's like, I want to know more about these characters and these open-ended things that in the game you don't explore because we are set to Ellie's perspective, but in a show, why not explore it? So I don't know if that's confirmation that we're getting an episode that introduces the Seraphites and the prophet and that backstory. And I think they will do something like that because, like, if you just introduce the Seraphites, like, you have to develop the Seraphites, I think, going into season 2 and season 3 because they are so important to Abby's story and Lev's story. And I think it's so important to make sure Lev's story lands. Just as important as, like, all these Ellie moments that need to land, Lev's story, his journey with Abby needs to hit correctly.
Yeah. Do you think they'll bring Ian back to play?
I'd love that, but I doubt it. I think Ian's gonna cameo. Like I think they're gonna bring like people like Shannon Woodward, who we must thank for this show's existence. Thank you, Shannon.
Yep.
I think she'll cameo. I think like they'll just bring a lot of the cast back. Like I think the only person who will return to their role, and I hope, and I think we all agree this would be amazing. And I also feel like we all forget he's in this. Jeffrey Wright as the leader of WLF.
Oh, yeah.
They gotta bring him back.
Oh, wow.
Like, I feel like we all forget that that's him in The Last of Us too.
No, honestly, that's a great point. I honestly forget that that's.
And if they are gonna recast it, Lance Reddick would be my next pick.
Oh.
If for some reason they can't bring back Jeffrey Wright, and I feel like he'll do it. Like if he did the game, I feel like he would do the HBO show.
Jeffrey Wright is in almost everything, so I know he wants that.
Yeah, he wants that bag. Check. He wants that money.
The check
he'd have DC. He'd have DC, Marvel, and then The Last of Us. Westworld, rest in peace.
Yeah, Westworld.
Yeah, and he was in Westworld. He has
and he
got ties at HBO then. So yeah.
And it could work. I think it'd be cool. And
I will say,
Shannon Woodward's in Westworld. There's a Last of Us connection. Boom. I wonder if that's how he got brought into The Last of Us too. I've never thought about that. Like,
because Hallie worked on Westworld, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. You're right. I think so. She worked on it, and Shannon was brought in. Oh, I think maybe before Westworld. Like she's talked about it, and like it's interesting. Like just like the pipeline of Westworld to The Last of Us, and now if you look at the Fallout show, which is being done by the showrunners of Westworld, like it's like they're all connected. And I'm a huge Bethesda and Fallout fan, so like,
dude, I am
about that stuff.
Obsessed with Fallout, dude. Like that was one of the like first video games I ever fell in love with. No, for real, bro. Like,
he ain't never.
What happens in like
a huge? I went into like a huge deep dive when I was younger, and just
how
like
deep. So like when I say Vault 70, when I say Vault 79,
I don't know all that. I don't know all that much. I don't know all that much.
Yeah, I'm gonna whip out a Vault Boy puppet and just start like. It's my favorite Vault. I could talk about Fallout for hours. This is a bad topic.
I used to love it, but I was never like. I kind of got away from it.
I'm deep getting into the Bethesda lore.
I will say VA does have some like very juicy stuff on his Twitter. I don't know if y'all have checked it out. Like, I think
about the show.
Yeah, like it's some
juicy.
Okay, I ain't even gonna look.
Stuff.
I ain't gonna.
Yeah, look. Don't look.
I'm not looking anymore. I looked last week before it was like big spoilers. I saw it in like a quote tweet
Yeah.
Okay.
So he actually said an actor, is playing that fella. And so I have the picture pulled up right here. And
Oh, you have the actor who's playing Jerry?
I'm assuming he's talking about Jerry, yeah. And it's the actor that's playing him. I think
Is
he
it the
dropped
actor
that
from the
name.
game? Potentially. Do you recognize the name like as a voice actor? Because he did the face scan, if I remember correctly. He's also the face of Jerry. But he might not be. I just know that they brought him back. And if he doesn't look like Jerry, what does he look like? So we can fan cast Abby. Describe this.
This dude,
Is he
what does
famous?
he
It's
look
like 20 questions. Okay. Is he
What
famous?
does he look like? Honestly, if you were to show me him, I would just be like, this looks like some random dude. I didn't know he was like,
Okay.
I
kind of
in
want to look
anything.
now.
Do you want me to tell you a movie?
I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
So this person's big enough that you know him from a movie. That's
I don't
bigger
know
than
him from.
Jerry ever
I'm looking on
was.
IMDb.
Yeah, I think he
said
looked
he's
his
something.
IMDb. I think he's on his
Okay.
IMDb.
Give us like a. Do you want to know what? I don't want to do something that you don't want to hear.
I don't
I'll
think
look
Charlie is.
later.
I'll take my headphones out. I'll take my headphones out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And anybody listening, if you're listening this far,
Plug
which I
your
doubt
ears,
you
guys. Turn off
skip
the podcast
ahead.
and then
Yeah, just press 15 seconds ahead. Okay. Do you want me to tell you who it is, or just like the movie?
Just save a movie. I want to think about it.
Okay, I'll tell you. He was in Godzilla 2014.
Oh.
And
no.
he was also in Tron Legacy 2010.
Okay, I'm gonna think about that the rest of the time.
Okay, now boom, we're good for spoilers. No more spoilers, leaks,
Yeah,
anything. But be careful of his account.
It's literally Noah North. No, I'm kidding.
It's Tom Holland. It's Tom Holland. It's Tom
Yo,
Holland.
Tommy boy.
All of the
that's
Nathan
my
Drakes
man.
are returning. Tom Holland and Noah North are just gonna both play Jerry. One per season.
walks exactly. No, one
Yeah.
walks out, and then he walks back to the back, and then Nolan North comes out. That'd be sick.
Dude.
Imagine if it was. I don't even like.
They're like trying to tell us, see, guys, Uncharted was perfect casting. Like,
Yeah.
they look so alike.
Imagine, dude. So yeah, that is about it for The Last of Us. Very good discussion here. This was a ton of fun. I cannot wait for next week.
It's gonna be crazy.
Wait.
The finale is gonna be nuts.
Yeah, Brendan, if you're able to join, dude, we'd love to have you back on.
I wish I could, but
So you're just gone, like all.
I am going to be in Florida, relaxing, escaping school for a week.
There you go.
And watching The Last of Us from like, I don't know, wherever I'm at 9:00 on Sunday
with
night.
fireworks going on again. You know,
Maybe, yeah, probably accurate. Yeah, actually, no, I think I'll find a way. Because in the end, everything happens for a reason, right?
Oh no, dude! Don't start. Get him out of here. Oh no.
God.
All right, cool. That concludes The Last of Us, episode 8, the penultimate. We have one more episode. We're down to one more episode. We will be back for that one next week. Obviously, we're going to be tackling movies such as John Wick, Shazam. Unfortunately, I mean, Zachary Levi's kind of.
Oh yeah. Screw him. But like, Dame Helen Mirren is in that.
Yeah,
Lucy
we'll still check
Liu
it out.
is in that.
We'll still check it out.
Don't take down the whole
Hey,
ship
we
with
covered
on it.
We covered Black Adam on here. We got to cover Shazam on here. There's
that.
no way we're gonna. Yeah, there's no way we're
Black
gonna
Adam's
cover Black
so
Adam
bad.
and not Shazam. So yeah, we will be back for that. We're gonna be tackling a lot of movies, so don't worry. Even though The Last of Us is going away, we will still be back, putting out some content. So that has been The Last of Us episode 8. As Charlie said earlier, link tree in the bio. Brendan's stuff is all going to be down there as well. Please go check his stuff out, Dan.bren. And you know where to find me and Charlie. So yeah, without further ado, that is The Last of Us episode 8, episode 44 of the pod. We will see you next time.
Adios.
Thanks for having me. Have a good night or good morning or good afternoon.
There you go. Later.